call this meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Open forum. Anybody want to speak tonight? Okay. Move on. Consent agenda, approval of the minutes, approval of the bills, purchase orders, approval of the investments. Then there's a couple resolutions here. There's one resolution number 2021-16, a donation amount of $250 from the Great Eagle Bertram Lions Club towards the ambulance department. Resolution number 2021-17, a donation of $415.81 to the Melrose Police Department for repairs from Quinsac Collision Center. Thank you. And resolution number 2021-21, a donation of $6,000 from the VFW Post 7050 to the Melrose Fire Department towards the fire truck. And then there's an ambulance department account bad debt. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. It is 6:02. We have a public hearing for the JTEK easement vacation.
So this evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, there is a public hearing to consider a request to partially vacate an easement originally recorded in 1992 at Stearns County as document number 724580. The public hearing relates to a 66-foot strip of land over and across the following described real estate. That part of the west half of section 34, township 126 north, range 33 west, Stearns County, Minnesota, described as follows. Commencing at the intersection of the west right-of-way line of 3rd Avenue West with the southwest right-of-way of Riverside Avenue. Then northwesterly along said southwesterly right-of-way line of Riverside Avenue, a distance of 690 feet to the actual point of beginning. Then southwesterly at a right angle, a distance of 135 feet, more or less, to a line 50 feet northeasterly of, as measured, at a right angle to the center line of the main track of the Burlington Northern Railroad. Thence northwesterly along said line in a distance of 66 feet. Thence northeasterly at a right angle at a distance of 150 feet, more or less, to the southwesterly right-of-way line of said Riverside Avenue. Thence southeasterly along said right-of-way line to the point of beginning. This easement is located on land owned by JTEK Properties across and between two parcels with the addresses of 400 Riverside Avenue, parcel 663651600010, and 500 Riverside Avenue, parcel 663651600012. A copy of the proposed request is available for review at the City Center, and there are attachments in your packet. I also have I will present the affidavit of publication for hearing at this time, Mr. Mayor.
That, yeah, we need this on. Do we need that on? We're good, right?
We don't need, nobody's on the line, are they?
Okay, good. So, yeah. So it's open to public comment now. I'm just checking to see if anybody wants to give any input or any questions. I do not see anybody in here. So what we'll do is we will proceed on this later on in the agenda, and it is 6:05 now. So we'll move on then. Reports, Police Department monthly report.
Good evening. Reading our April 2021 in our traffic area, we had 19 citations written in April, 59 verbal warnings, 1 written warning. For the month of April 2021, we had 258 calls or requests for service, and in 2020, we had 227, so a slight increase there. We ended on ICR 1122, and this year we ended on 1267, so we're up about 145 calls for the year, which we've had a steady increase since the beginning of the year each month, so we'll see what the rest of the COVID time in between there does for us, but that's about it for that. 25 agency assists, a little bit lower than what we normally see, but that's a good thing. Some areas just to highlight or talk about. We did start ordinance violations at the beginning of the month. We had about 43 of them, so that number is about, I think we're usually hovering the 60s last couple of years, maybe last year's COVID time frame or a little bit later or warmer spring helped us out. So I did send 20 follow-up letters though for people who did not meet the deadline of the 10 days. So we'll give them an additional 5 days, and after that we'll have to look towards either council action or court action to resolve those issues. Nothing terrible or too bad, but still things that need to be taken care of. We have been dealing with some noise issues throughout the city. We actually borrowed the decimeter from Gary and the street crew to try and get some base levels and work on what's excessive, what isn't excessive, and figure out where those standards are. So could be issues down the road, but right now we're just trying to get those things ironed out and figure out where we stand on some of those things. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Chief, appreciate it. City Attorney report, Scott?
Good evening. I would say, just looking at a report, the ongoing action with Melrose Community LLC and Mr. Bonner. When we met last month, this was scheduled for a trial on May 11th, and I expected that we would be back here telling you how that went. We didn't have a trial. Some kind of miscommunications at the court. There was a pretrial hearing. However, Mr. Bonner's attorney had also filed a motion for summary judgment, and the judge didn't learn of that until we actually met for the pretrial hearing. And by that time, she said, well, there isn't enough time to respond to that before trial. So the trial has been continued indefinitely. The time we had scheduled for a trial on the 11th was rescheduled to be arguments on the summary judgment motion. The judge took it under advisement. I don't know when we'll get a decision on that motion. The judge mentioned that they're opening up too, and they have a backlog. And she mentioned that there's 11 other of these issues that she's got to prepare and issue opinions for before ours comes up. So we're waiting, and depending on the outcome of the motion hearing, then we would reschedule the trial. So it's no change on that one. Other items on the report, so I mentioned the easement vacation, and was what we had the public hearing on this evening. The business on cup amendments, just addressing some questions. If we were wanting to change the terms on a cup conditional use permit after it's been issued, how do we do that? And we really can't just amendment. It really has to be something that would be initiated and negotiated with the current cup holder. Really, from the city standpoint, for us, it's either they're in compliance or they're not in compliance. If they're not in compliance, we can revoke. But we don't get to say, I wish we'd have said this when we wrote this conditional use permit. Let's just amend it to, change the terms or add something. We don't get to do that. We got to live with what we approved and put in there in the first place. Finally, we had kind of an odd data practices request. It wasn't just the city of Melrose. I'm thinking probably just about every city in the state of Minnesota got the same request. I think there's a firm down in the Twin Cities that's trying to build up their own database, which they can then market, as a real estate tool and sell information, to people. And so they wanted to inspect and then potentially copy all of the city's building permits, going all the way back to like day one. Yeah. So we kind of struggled with that a little bit, but they are public documents, and it was a legitimate request. What this company was hoping was that the city of Melrose already had all this information on the computer and could just give them, the data, and they would add it to their computer. We don't. The city has only got a year or two's building permit information online. Everything else is paper. So we invited them to come up to Melrose, and we would make it available to them if they wanted to inspect it. And if there was anything they wanted a copy of, we'd make a copy of it for them, and they'd pay the going rate for copies. Haven't heard back from them, so.
So we can charge some sort of a fee for releasing that information, even though it's public?
Well, if they just come in and say, I'd like to see it, we got to show it to them. If they want a copy, we can charge them so much for a copy. But yeah, they didn't want it bad enough to come up here and actually handle paper. So that's all I've got, unless you folks have some questions on any of these things or any of the other items.
No. Thank you, Scott. Finance Director, Tessa?
Good evening. For the general fund, the revenues through the first quarter were $140,908, which was about 5% of our budget. So typically revenues run really low at the beginning of the year because we get our taxes and local government aid in June and December. Those together make up about 81% of the budget. We also have some charges for revenue and animal license that came after first quarter as well. Expenses totaled $412,690, which is only about 14% of budget. With that, a large portion of our budget is transferred to our capital project fund, and that's done in July and December as well. So those costs are delayed as of first quarter. We also have received some revenues for building inspections or building permits, but the building inspector was paid in April, so those expenses are not included. The MATA fund had very minimal activity in first quarter. There wasn't a lot that was happening yet. Our ambulance department, total revenue was $201,380, about 29%, so they've been pretty busy. The expenses totaled $162,965, or about 24% of budget, so right on track. As far as for the detail for the ambulance department, they transferred to the general fund for administrative fees, but those expenses aren't incurred until year end. However, their school and travel expenses were slightly higher because they've done EMT and BLS refresher courses. The fire department had total revenue of $18,160, about 10% of budget. Most of the revenue for the fire department comes in December when we get the contract charges from the townships as well as the city. And the expenses totaled $37,991, or about 21% of budget. And that was with purchase of some new radios. There were also some legal fees that were paid to help for the grant writing. Special revenue funds, total revenue was $438, and total expenses were $1,384. the activity during the first quarter was very minimal for those. And for our capital projects funds, total revenues were $2,349. As I said, we haven't had the transfers in from the general fund, and the expenses also were low as a lot of the equipment purchases are happening now later in the year. The street projects were just a minimal engineering cost at that point. And finally, our debt service funds, the total expenses were $142,251, which was 94% of the budget, and our principal and interest payments have been made already. The revenue was only interest, but unfortunately we had some market value losses, so it was negative interest in a way that was allocated to that fund due to their deficit cash balance at the beginning of the year because we draw it down and then it's replaced with the interest payment or the taxes that come in throughout the year. Does anybody have any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work, Tessa. All right, city engineer report, Jody?
Thank you. So I'll run through projects that we have here. So we have the 2021 chip seal project. The contracts have been signed by the city, going to be forwarded to the contractor, and they anticipate starting August 4th. With the 2021 street improvements, project was awarded by the council. WSB is sending the contracts to Mark Lee for signature. The anticipated start date is mid-June to the end of June for that project. We have the County Road 65 drainage improvements. Final inspection's been made, leaving the pipe as is. WSB is going to be making an offer of $3,500 for the remaining unpaid contract amount, prepare a final pay request for the next council meeting. We have the 2020 street improvements. That includes 5th Street North, 4th Street North, and 3rd Avenue North, and there's no change in status for that, but the pinch list items will be completed this spring. For the 2nd Street South and 3rd Avenue Southeast flooding issue, 5th Avenue storm sewer system, preliminary plan's been completed and reviewed with the staff. The required ponding area is preferred to be the one in the northeast quadrant of the intersection of Craft Drive and 5th Avenue. More specific details regarding the pond sizing depth will be determined prior to speaking with the property owner, and Jake Newhall is following up with the staff from our office. Would you like the update with the road, dam, and bridge right now? I seen the results of the open house was listed as item 8, so I'll go through all that right now. So a little bit more familiar with this project than the other ones, but the major milestone there is that the 60% plans were submitted to the city and the county for comments, and we received comments back on those, so we're working through those comments right now. We have the 60% cost was submitted as well. The bridge plans are also being reviewed by MnDOT. A couple of the outstanding issues that we're working with the city is a pedestrian crossing that'll be north of the bridge. We're fine-tuning the location on that and sidewalk. We've been working with Roger and Gary on the lighting across the bridge. And so right now our plan is to light on both sides of the bridge. And there will be, it was originally set up at the edge of the abutments, and we're moving that in a little bit closer on the piers and work through the spacing so there's no gaps in the lighting coverage. The edits to the maintenance plan for the dam are being worked on. We've received the ownership up and downstream of the plan now, so we have that to be included. We're working on the staging. We have that included in the 60%. There's some work that we're doing with the construction staging and the detour, finalizing that, working with the city and the county on that. Another major milestone that we're getting very close to with the 60% plans, having all the comments back, we can also now send in our permits to the DNR and the Corps, and so that'll be done here within the week. We're hoping either tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday, so very soon on that. We've been coordinating extensively with DNR and Core throughout this, so we don't really see any issues. And they've been well aware of working through everything as we've been progressing through the project, so anticipating that should go smoothly. The Clomar application will also be submitted within the next week. LCSCMR grant was submitted on April 2nd, and then we are not moving forward with the Lessard Sams. With the open house, we have that scheduled for June 17th, most likely be right before the city council meeting. Really set up as a information meeting to provide an awareness of the project, lay out some expectations as far as timing. We'll be going over the funding. County is still optimistic that they'll receive part of the $30 million local bridge bonding that's being discussed right now. We'll also be able to give some high-level information on the construction, staging, and detours, but that'll again be fine-tuned once we know who the contractor is and receive their schedule, but we can give an idea. We'll be discussing this information in a little bit more detail with the affected business owners prior to that June 17th meeting. Any questions for me?
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. City Administrator report.
On April 27th, the pre-construction meeting was held with Magni for the wastewater treatment project. That project update, even though it's, you know, a utility project, that update and minutes were included as part of your packet. We also received our new NPDES permit that stipulates the chloride limits. So chloride limits and a chloride schedule that we have to comply with. So we will be sending out an addendum to all of our current significant industrial user agreements. Freiberger is also in the process of reviewing those agreements. They're the bond attorney and determining if the language needs to be changed. Normally, we would have a meeting with the big three in July, but it may be better just to have individual meetings similar to what we did in February. That was pretty successful. Kind of going back and forth with the bond attorney, whether we issue tax-free bonds or taxable bonds. The interest rate on either of the bonds are the same. It might be easier to do the taxable simply because of sort of some of the disclosures that you need to have on the other side. That is not, that's that hasn't been decided yet, but when we get to the point, the bond attorney will come here and do the presentation as far as the bonds go. Because the city council will have to actually issue you guys are the ones who are gonna have to issue that. On April 30th, 2021, as Jody said, on April 30th, 2021, the pre-construction meeting was held with SCH and Classic Protective Coatings regarding the North Water Tower. If you've been by there, you've seen that they have started the Verizon cell tower, or the Verizon equipment is down and on a temporary pole, and they should have been there today or tomorrow for the start of that project.
And if I read that correctly, that's a full restoration inside now.
Correct. Yep. And then they're also putting in a mixer, I think, maybe. If I got that right. I don't remember, but I think it's a mixer, isn't it, or something? Yeah. So the way we did that, I mean, this is kind of, but this will really save the life of those towers for a lot longer doing this maintenance like we're doing. It's going to save us about $63,000, or on the utility side about $63,000 by being able to do what we're doing with the towers right now. So, and I just want to commend whoever it was that designed those towers and put the concrete on the bottom, because that is so much easier to maintain and it's so much better. So you guys are kind of ahead of your time. My understanding is Melrose was only the second community that had ever done that when they put those towers in. So that's really good. Jody has talked about the RDB, so later on in the agenda, we'll talk a little bit more about the open house. Hires, we have hired a temporary receptionist. Erica Duckett is going to be working for us this summer while Stephanie is out. The city planner position closed on Friday, May 14th, and we only received one application. Again, that is an item that we will be discussing later on in the agenda. For the street department, Gary was able to hire back his temporary help from this past summer. So he's got the same helper that's gonna, or same worker that's gonna be doing some of the things that he did last summer, primarily mowing lawns, taking care of the park, that type of thing. The wastewater department was able to hire somebody. The the electric department did not. They interviewed, but they weren't able to get somebody hired for their temporary position. Mike, who has been with the city as our civil engineer for 9 years, will be leaving WSB. He has left WSB. He's here as a just a concerned citizen, I guess. Would you say? So Gary and I had the opportunity to meet with WSB management and discuss the needs of the city. You know, normally we go out for an RFP, but because we're in the middle of the RDB project, it's not prudent to do that. And we talked to WSB about that. So we're still kind of working through that. You know, it was important that Gary had quite a bit of say as far as who we end up with on the civil side, because he has to work with that person probably more than anyone. So we don't have anyone yet, but we're hopeful that soon we'll be able to have somebody in place. In the meantime, Jody and other folks are just taking care of whatever needs to be taken care of for us. The American Recovery Fund legislation. So the city, as we talked about, I believe before, will be receiving American Recovery Funds sometime in May. And it sounds like, and Tessa probably can give you more information because she was able to be part of the webinar, we're getting half of it this year.
We'll receive 50% in the next couple of months, and the remaining portion will be paid in 2022. And then we can incur expenses for this money through 2024, and it has to be spent by 2026. So we have some time to think about.
Right. And it's going to require us to have a resolution for the council. So, you know, it might be prudent for us to have this conversation again in June. And if you guys have a path that you want to go down with those funds or how you'd like to spend them, that would be the time for us to probably talk about that. I can tell you, and we talked about this before, infrastructure is one of the things you can use it for, but it's only sewer and water. It's not, unfortunately, I can't use it for trails or that type of thing. But the legislature did actually they recessed session on May 17th, but they're still a long ways away from getting a deal done as far as the budget goes. It sounds like the sides are pretty close together, so hopefully they're going to come together in the next couple weeks, and we're going to see something come out of that. From our perspective, the two things that we need to see are the bridge bonding dollars, and then also we have some language in the ombudsman bill regarding the craft lot, so we're hopeful that'll be in there. And I have other items later on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, but that is all I have right now for my update.
All right, sounds good. All right, we're on to action items. And so with the first resolution, number 2021-19, a resolution vacating a part of the roadway easement between Riverside Avenue Northwest and the Lake Wobegon Trail upon petition of a majority of abutment landowners. So there's a sort of few of them here that we have to go through. So, including with that, a majority of the landowners to the requirement that it's attached to 30-foot easement be dedicated. So are you guys okay with that? Can I get a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Right, we have to get these 3 points.
Correct.
Okay, so can I get point one?
These are each a separate.
These will each be separate.
I'll second Mr. Frieder's motion.
All right, first and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Part 2 is authorized recording of notice of completion of proceedings for vacating the street. Can I get a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Then the third point is dedication of a utility easement along the easterly 30-foot and adjacent to the vacation of the right-of-way easement on the PID 6636518010. Can I get a motion to approve that?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Then now we're on to the resolution number 2021-20, resolution approving case number VAR-3-2021-102, application for the variance from the minimal rear setback requirements in the I zone industrial zone district. Can I get a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Then, we got that all taken care of. And then now we're on resolution number 2021-18, the City of Melrose and the Melrose City Public Utilities approving reserve capacity agreement with Missouri River Basin Municipality Agency, DBA Missouri River Energy Services, MRES, reserve capacity agreement. Did you need to have any
Scott, I'm
follow-up with that?
assuming you reviewed this a little bit? Basic language is pretty basic language. Yeah.
You've had a similar agreement.
Yep.
A few times already.
Okay, so there's nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah, you're basically agreeing you're gonna maintain your waivers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, when they call us to use them, they have to be ready to go. They have to work whenever they call of us, and we have to have so many hours per year that we have to guarantee them that our generators will be working.
So it's something there is an ongoing cost because they have to.
Yeah. And even if we have a maintenance cycle, we have to actually let them know about, I think it was 9 months in advance. If we're
Yeah.
gonna do maintenance on it, we have to give them that, have much of a lead time with it, which usually isn't too bad. Because Roger does a pretty good job down there taking care of it, so.
When was the last time they called and asked?
I think it's 4
Sure.
times a year on
Yeah.
average, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the really hot days, I suppose.
Yeah, and they actually did it on a cold day last winter with that, like those vortex, they'll get calls for
Actually,
that
we're
too.
using, our generation was used.
Yeah,
Well, if worst comes to worst, we'll go out and buy a 3,000 watt Honda generator to help. out with that.
yeah. So, yeah, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, there's a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And then Ryan Consulting LLC contract.
Yep.
Did you want to mention anything about it? Yeah, because I know maybe a couple questions.
So, city, I had actually discussed with the mayor and council members individually the hiring of Tracy Ryan to help with economic and community development projects. Tracy would work specifically on projects as directed by myself and not as a contracted staff member where she would be in the office on a regular basis, although it turns out that she is kind of being in the office on a regular basis just because of the projects that we have. And so if we were just gonna pay her based on that, once we kind of put the numbers together and she would have to bill her time, it would cost us $100 an hour, and that would add up really, really quickly. For those of you who know or don't know, Tracy Ryan has been a long-term consultant with the city. She does all of our tax increment financing projects, and she was very much involved with the Crafts Lot and some other things that have happened here. And so she and I talked about doing a contract, I guess you would call it that, or giving her a retainer. I don't know if a retainer is a good word, I don't like that word, but just she would enter into a contract with us for 6 months, again based on projects, and it would end up not to exceed $2,000 a month. If it looked like she was going, you know, if she was spending a lot more time than what we think or if she was spending a lot more time, we'd have to come back and reevaluate it. But we felt that that was a cost-effective way to be able to use her services and also get the most bang for our buck. And she's agreed to it. Tracy's already been down here. She's actually operating out of contract, so right now we've been having to pay her just on an individual basis. So this would really, I believe, help the council long-term. The one thing that you'll notice if you read her contract, this does not include any tax increment financing work or anything like that. Those would be separate. Similar to, if you think of our engineering firms, every project they do, we enter separate contracts with them. for different things, and the tax increment financing, Tracy would actually get reimbursed for that in administration through those programs, similar to if we apply to any Minnesota Housing Finance Agency programs, any deed programs, the administration portion of those programs, we can use that money to reimburse costs that we have output for Tracy. But we need, the reality is we need help. We're short, and housing and labor, that's all I hear about right now, and that's what she's working on, so.
And this agreement appears to be both fair to Ms. Ryan and to the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't have any issues with it. She's waiving her per diem. She's not gonna charge us for that, and I think it's really fair, actually.
Okay.
And again, you can look at her statement of qualification. She's very experienced.
Yep.
So the last 6 weeks, what is she, I mean, like, what's an average of hours, I mean, that she would have, if she's been helping us the last 6 weeks? I mean, like,
it
if she comes in
varies.
1 month and we're, I mean, I don't know.
1 week, I mean, she put in over 20 hours just in 1 week, so there's your,
Right, I'm just wondering, like, if it's monthly, like, if all of a sudden we contact her for something and a few hours are spent, we pay that full amount even though a few hours were spent? Like, then the
So
hourly-
that's why we kind of talked about that, and that was a concern that was brought up also. Tony's not here, but him and I had a chance to talk about that before the meeting. And there's certain milestones that she has to reach per the agreement. So, if I say, I need you to work on X, Y, Z, and this is what I expect, then we have a report that we get every month, and we have an accounting for the time that she spent.
And she's actively pursuing development.
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I was just gonna say, cause otherwise the $100 an hour, doesn't seem so bad if all of a sudden you're getting one big lump sum for a little bit of time.
Yeah. And that's why it's only 6 months, because then we can evaluate it. Maybe if things
Okay.
get less crazy, we get another person on board. I, as your administrator, we talked about this, under Matt, I'm the executive director, and so I certainly am happy to spend time on economic development, but right now I simply cannot spend the time on economic development, because we don't have a planner.
Okay.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. RDB open house.
So Jody touched on that a little bit, but I would like to actually have input from the council as far as, Patty, we didn't post that time or anything, did we?
I haven't posted it yet because I don't have a time yet.
Okay, so we could do it at the beginning of a council meeting, we could do it before the council meeting. I guess that's the discussion I'd like to see the council have. Again, as Jody said, it's informational. Do you envision you're gonna have boards and people stationed at different places, or are you just gonna do a big presentation?
Kind of a combination of both. We'll give a short presentation at the beginning for the people who are there, highlight the project, over the key elements, the funding, the timeline, different things like that, and then have boards of our own, and people will be here to answer questions.
Okay, very good.
4:30 to 6, is that going to give enough of an opportunity for folks getting off of work if they want to pop in and look, do you think?
I think so, and I think we advertise this, again, people need to understand, I think that's where, we set that stage. This isn't a public hearing, this is simply for your information. It's not public input, I guess would be the best, not that it's not public input, but the design's there. It's really for your information from a public standpoint. So, I think 4:30 to 6 is fine. I guess it's up to you guys. I don't know if you also want to send invitations out to certain groups, or if you just want us to blast it on our website or Facebook page, do an article in the paper, whatever you guys would like. I guess that would be the other part of it. We know that in the past there's been, it's been some issues because of all the different reiterations of this project, and so I don't know if it would make sense to actually have some of those folks, call them up and say, hey, just so you know, there's an open house. Do you want us to send all the people that live on the lake letter? I mean, I don't know what you want. Because one of the things we are gonna talk about is, that dam is, or that water level is coming down during the winter when that dam is repaired. And the bridge is gonna be out for a long time.
Right, and it's kind of, the Birch Lake Association, I think, has their meeting the first Saturday in June. If we were just to bring that to their attention, they
Oh,
could
to
maybe-
for
maybe
Melrose
They
Lake?
could, yeah, they could probably mention it to the
Okay.
attendees this year, and then they'd kind of be aware that there's gonna be a little bit of an inconvenience.
Are you talking
next
in the
year.
Melrose Lake Association, or are you talking about Birch?
Birch.
Birch Lake, not
Birch
Melrose
Lake.
Lake.
Birch Lake.
Like Big Birch and
Association.
Little Birch Lake Associations. That's,
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have an annual meeting with the property owners around both of the lakes out there.
Yeah. I don't know if our stuff will impact them really.
Well, I'm just thinking about the lake people next summer are not going to be able, just so they got a heads up,
Oh, for the traffic in the bridge, yeah.
yes.
I see what you're saying.
yeah.
I thought you meant Melrose Lake, okay. If you want me to attend that, I'm more
I
than
don't
happy to do
necessarily
so.
believe we have to attend it, but if we could somehow get them some correspondence prior to the meeting, if they wanted to put it on their agenda and bring it up to the attendees, that,
They could come to
there's a very
open
good
house,
chance
yeah.
that going through Melrose is gonna be much more difficult next year if you wanna start thinking about an alternate route through Freeport and so on and so forth.
Okay.
We might not want that though.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that we can plaster it everywhere, our Facebook page, our city website, I think that's good enough. I want us to move forward. We've had plenty of plans, and who knows with the way the legislature is acting, who knows what's gonna happen. We might not get the money again. That's the fun part of our good old state of Minnesota, so.
Well,
That's my opinion.
And the bonding bill was approved, it's just, we don't know exactly where all the appropriations are going, correct?
Correct, yep. So we don't know how much of it's in the bridge
Gonna
part
be in a
of it.
bridge, yep. So, does that answer your questions?
Yep, I
Okay.
think that gives us a good plan moving forward.
All right. City planner position, I want to touch base on that one too.
Yep, so as I stated, we ended up with one applicant for that position. And certainly can bring the applicant in, interview them, but I never like to interview one person for a job, I guess. I think it's important that we get a little bit more in the field. We're not alone, so that makes me feel a little bit better because I talked to Wilmer, who's also actually advertising for a city planner position, and they've extended it over a month from when they had originally extended it, and they now have 8 applicants, and as Mike over there told me, of those 8, he may have one that is somebody that they would consider hiring. So the rest may or may not meet the qualifications, but it's tough everywhere. Every place I go, I'm hearing from everybody kind of the same thing. It's, we're impacted by the labor stuff just as everyone else is. So I'm not sure what we do about this one though.
Well, you have a very good idea as to what's involved with the position, the amount of time and so on and so forth. Is there any way we could potentially share an individual with another municipality?
I thought about that too. That was kind of one of the conversations I had with Wilmer. I could reach out. The only other community, Sauk, I think, is the only other community that has a planner position that's close by.
It may not be a good option, but, if you think it's worthwhile to look into, seeing as how our current options are little to none.
Yeah.
What do you think would be the best option to go advertise it again for another month?
That might not hurt. We could go after, it's expensive, but maybe we get it in different markets. Patty and I and Tessa talked about that. Or we use the LinkedIn option, although it had over 1,000 views on LinkedIn. But there's an option under LinkedIn where you can actually, I think, advertise jobs. St. Cloud maybe we hit the schools again, the U of M, St. Cloud, and Mankato. The problem with that is that means we don't get anybody with experience, but it also means that most of those folks have already got jobs because of this time of year. So then if we held off and kind of limped along, then we'd be looking probably in December because that's when the next class would be graduating. I don't know. I don't have a good answer. The good, I guess, in some respects, the good news is the building tech in that department is very, very good. And I, obviously, with my background, have a very strong planning background. So we're able to do that side of it. But I don't think long-term, you probably want to be doing that. So, you know, I'm kind of out of ideas. I'm not sure where you guys want to go with this.
Would an internship work for that position or not necessarily?
I mean, it would, but I don't know if we could get an intern this late, you know what I mean? Like, they've already probably got their summer stuff, but, I mean, it's a busy position. It's a very busy position.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to advertise again. Maybe do it further, mark it out. I don't know if you guys,
The only thing is, I mean, I know you only you'd like to interview more than one person, but you might have a chance that all of a sudden you get nothing and that one applicant's gone.
well, I think
So-
advertise it, and you could interview the person as you're advertising it.
Or I think better yet, Mr. Mayor, if we sent that individual that did apply a letter and just explained to them we got one applicant, and that we feel obligated for an interview process to at least have a couple more.
Yeah.
We'll retain their information while we re-advertise and try to get more applicants.
Yeah.
That way, it's like, well, it's not that we don't want you, we just don't know for sure, you know. Keep them
Yes.
in the queue, just, you
Mhm.
know, and then see if there aren't some other folks that are interested.
Yeah, otherwise just, I don't know if we can. I actually called my colleagues in all the other communities. I reached out to St. Cloud and the counties and everything, and my response back from all of them is, well, you're not taking our people. So I'm like, well, I didn't expect to take somebody from you, but can you help a person out? Do you have an extra? And they all just kind of laughed because, like I said, we're all in that same boat right now. Just like the engineers, you can't find engineers, you just can't find workers. It's a tough situation right now.
Okay, so what do you guys wanna do?
I'd re-advertise.
I think that's the most logical next step.
Okay.
Maybe a shorter timeline, or if you need to adjust that.
Yeah.
Or I'll give you the leniency to, if you think shorter is better, if not, if you wanna do a whole month, whatever you think would be the best. So, are we good with that?
Okay.
Okay. All right, CDC guidelines?
So both the CDC and the state of Minnesota have come out with new guidance regarding dialing back COVID restrictions. It is a bit confusing, however, just because what the CDC says and what the state of Minnesota did are kind of two different things. What we know as of today is if they're fully vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask or physically distance in any setting except where required by federal, state, local, tribal, or territorial laws, including local businesses and workplace guidance. So basically, what we decided internally as a city, and you can tell me if you guys don't like our decision, but we're not the mask police. If our folks don't want to wear masks, the people that work for us, you know, just use common sense. We're not asking people if they're vaccinated or not. I am, you know, I'll tell you, you know, I am. But I just, it's one of those things that, you know, still keep wash your hands, keep 6 feet apart, that type of thing. So that's kind of how we're handling it internally. Now, if we have somebody that tests positive for COVID, if somebody has been exposed to somebody who has COVID, we're still making them go and get the test because that's what they have to do. The city staff also knows that if they go into a business that is requiring that they be masked, they have to keep masks with them because they're still have to be respectful of what that business says. I can tell you that hospitals, clinics, the hospital, the clinic, and the school, you still have to be masked. So that's how we're handling that. The only tricky part then is if we get a positive COVID, and I guess, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. but that's kind of how we're handling it, so. And it's really similar, you know, I've talked to my colleagues in other communities, and that's pretty much how everyone's handling it right now.
All right. 8D, potential land purchase.
So, back in 2019, we talked about a land purchase, and you guys gave myself the authorization to go ahead and negotiate some terms, get an appraisal, et cetera. That was a conversation that we had with the Economic Development Authority and the council. And then in April of 20, I believe, when everything kind of, with the pandemic, was at full swing, we kind of really backed off that. And you as a council said, you know, now may not be the time for us to be looking at that. You know, continue to have the conversations, but really don't go back to negotiating some of the terms and actually kind of, you know, doing that. We're really out of that now, and housing is still, it's not going away. So I need to get some guidance from the council if I can proceed forth with having continuing discussions and negotiating in good faith so that I can bring something back to the Economic Development Authority and the council.
I think it's essential. Our housing situation is in desperate straits. We have to acquire some sort of land so that we can hopefully start new developments, apartments, whatever it might be, and provide some sort of housing for folks that want to live and work in Melrose.
Yep.
And I think it would help out our businesses too if we have some people that can move into town and work at some of our local businesses, so.
And we are actually working on some kind of exciting things right now, so I'm hoping.
Yeah.
The problem that we have is not with the lack of programs or the lack of creativity or our ability, it's the lack of land options. That's where we're at. Or the impression that folks have perhaps of what the values are. So.
Yep. So we're okay with that?
Works for me.
All right. There's no new business. Informational items is utility commission meeting minutes. Unless there's anything else, that's it. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All in favor, say aye.
Second.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.